Sentire Media.
Welcome to the Stop Italian Sounding podcast, uncovering authentic Italian food. I'm your host, Robert Campana, and join me as we delve into the rich heritage of genuine Italian food, exploring its legends, history, and traditions. Through important tips and insightful interviews with industry professionals, you'll gain a deeper understanding of authentic Italian food. Welcome back, everyone, to the Stop Italian Sounding show, uncovering authentic Italian food. So, for today's guest, I have the pleasure of speaking with Christina Conte, who I met on Instagram a few years ago. She is a Scottish Italian cooking in Los Angeles and is usually cooking, baking, or eating, or specifically, I should say, creating something delicious. When she isn't in the kitchen, she loves to travel near and far as long as good food is involved. So I definitely agree with that mentality. Christina is on the mission to save authentic Italian dishes from extinction and is also relentlessly promoting Scottish and British food as some of the best cuisine the world has to offer, one steak pie and sticky tofu pudding at a time. So I'm very much looking forward to having this conversation today and to the insight she's going to provide today as a Scottish Italian. Christina, thank you so much for coming on the show today and for taking the time out of your busy schedule.
It's my pleasure, Robert. Lovely to finally meet you or audio meet you or however we call this.
Exactly. I don't even know what the term would be, but e-meet sounds nice, finally. And one day we'll actually meet in person and be able to sit down with an espresso and discuss the topic that we both love, which is food and Italian food specifically. Just so our listeners are familiar with you, could you just recount your story and tell us more or less who you are and what led you to where you are right now?
It's a long story, but I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest version. I was born in Scotland to Italian parents, so our DNA is 100% Italian on both sides. The way that my family ended up in Scotland, a lot of Italians ended up in Scotland. The Italians that ended up coming to America, there was another lot that ended up going to England and Scotland and Ireland. My family was in Scotland and still is. I still have family there. They opened ice cream shops and fish and chip shops is the basic businesses that they went into. My father and my uncle and my cousins and lots of relatives all had fish and chip shops and some had ice cream shops. So I grew up in Scotland until I was almost 10, but with Italian upbringing, if that makes sense. But living in a country other than where you're from, you also incorporate that lifestyle, the culture, the food. So I do feel both Italian and Scottish as far as culturally and ethnically and the food that I make and all that. So my family ended up moving from Scotland to Michigan to open an Italian restaurant. It didn't happen, but I mean, we've always had food in our family.
But you did end up moving to Michigan, though, correct? Or it's just the restaurant part didn't happen?
Correct.
Okay.
The restaurant part didn't happen. So I ended up coming out here to California when I was 21, I think. Went into social work. I was the children's social worker. My background is in psychology. And when my son graduated from high school and went to Georgetown, I had breakfast with a couple of girlfriends who also had their sons graduate. And we were all discussing what we were going to do now that we were in a different chapter in our lives. And they both said, Christina, you have to do something with your cooking. Because I said, I really don't want to get back into social work because I felt like the system re-abuses these children and I didn't want to be part of it. And I said, I can't work at a restaurant. I'm not trained. And if somebody tells me how to cook something in a way I don't want to do it, I'm going to get fired because I know I can't do it. So they said, one of them said, start a blog. And this was 13 years ago. And I thought, I don't know anything about starting a blog and I don't even know why I even thought about starting a blog, but that night I went home and I Googled, how do you start a blog? And the next thing I knew, it said, congratulations, your site is live. And I almost had a heart attack.
Now you have to go forward with it.
It really felt that way. And I thought, no, 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 I need to take it off. Like, delete, back up.
Backspace.
Yeah. And I just thought, well, you know what? I'll just see what happens when I put things up. And I was putting things on Facebook up until then. I would
Oh,
cook
were you okay?
something and I would put the picture on Facebook.
Okay.
And I, had an album called, food, goodness gracious, food, or whatever it was, some album I had. So I thought, this is better than just putting it on Facebook. And
Right.
that's how it started.
Wow. 13 years ago.
Yeah. I
And
had
then,
no clue what I was doing blog wise.
and you called
And
it
I did everything.
Christina's Cucina, correct?
Yep. When it said enter the name you want to have for your blog, I just off the top of my head didn't even think about it, just put Christina's Cucina. And the next button I hit, it said, congratulations, your site is live.
Now you're moving forward with it. Very interesting. 13 years ago. So blogging was probably, I don't know, when did people start blogging? Because if you think of the whole social media world, 13 years ago, I mean, Facebook was around. Obviously, you said you were posting stuff on Facebook, and it was in
Yeah.
its infant stages, if you will. Not as big as it is now, but probably a lot of people were blogging. That's also when SEO, so search engine optimization, was probably pretty big as well, and you maybe were able to cash in on a lot of the key terms like cucina
I
or
didn't.
Italian.
I,
Oh
I
no.
didn't for a long time because I honestly didn't know anything. I didn't know what SEO was. I didn't know about keywords. I literally just would cook what we were having for dinner, take pictures with a little clicky camera,
Mhm.
was and put it on there. I mean, some of the pictures in the beginning were absolutely horrific. Um,
It's
but
funny
for
to look
whatever,
back. Isn't it funny to
yeah,
look back at, your initial work and say, wow, so I've grown so much and I've improved on so many different things. But I mean, everybody has to start somewhere. So after you open this blog, you would cook, you said you would put the images on your blog, you would write about them. And then where did that lead you the next few years after that? What were they like?
I think that the thing that kind of put me on a path that I knew that I was onto something, obviously when I started to get traffic, and it was, it just kept growing. I joined a group here in Los Angeles called Food Bloggers of Los Angeles,
Okay.
and we would have meetings. And I remember one time there was an SEO specialist that came to speak to us, and he said something about, um, you when you put your images on your site, you have to name them what they are so that Google knows what it is, because if you don't tell Google, it's not going to know. And I had been uploading them without names, and I had thousands of
Oh my
images.
gosh. So did you have to go back and did you go back and
Correct.
change? You did? Wow.
But I
That was
couldn't do all of them. It was just too much. I will go into an old post now and look at it, and it'll still say IMG 536. And I go,
Eh,
oh no,
yeah. Well, I mean, you didn't know. What you don't know, you
I
don't know,
didn't.
and
Right,
now you do. And
right.
of course, obviously now when you upload things, you do it the SEO driven way, which makes the most sense. So awesome. And by the way, you're doing a great job because I follow you also on Instagram, and all your social medias and everything you do is great.
Thank
You're a
you.
great representative of authentic Italian cuisine, and that's
I
something that we're
try.
both. So I mean, we all try.
Yeah.
We also all have our in my case American side because I'm an Italian American, and in your case, your Scottish side as well because you're a Scottish Italian. So let's take a minute and talk briefly about cultural culinary wisdom, if you will. So, how do Scottish and Italian food traditions reflect their respective cultures? And what can we learn from preserving these traditions in modern cooking? Because traditions are all something that a lot of people say they want to preserve, they want to live on, but we live in a quote unquote modern world with modern cooking. So, um, what can we learn from preserving these traditions in modern cooking, in your point of view?
There's a lot of ways I think it's important. Always, I believe, knowing and to say, people would argue, what is the original? The original of whatever dish or recipe that you have. But what we can all kind of agree that there's a line that you draw and say, this is the most original that we've got at this point, that we're gonna call it, that's the original. And if it's something that's got IGP or DOP or whatever, then that's easy because that's what we just use. Um, I think the Scottish food and cuisine, a lot of it goes back to, again, there were, very poor people and cold climate, and they had certain things that they used. So if you're using those same ingredients, those are the traditional and authentic way that it's been done. But things change, like you said. As long as you know what the original is, I think that gives you permission to experiment.
Right.
Do you know what I'm
Gotcha.
saying? So
Right.
if
So like
you
I'm thinking of the classic example carbonara because everybody
Mhm.
argues over a carbonara. If you were to change carbonara, it's no longer carbonara anymore, but it's okay to
Right,
experiment, just call it something else.
exactly. I have nothing to add to that. That's what I always say. You cook and make whatever it is you want. You want to throw balsamic on your caprese? Go ahead, do
Yeah.
it.
That's another
But
battle we're trying to
don't
fight.
but don't call it a caprese. It's not
Right.
caprese anymore
Right.
because
Exactly.
the Southern Italians especially. There was one time when I was having, it was actually Enzo Cocha's restaurant, the pizza guru. Uh, I was on a tomato press tour, and I was sitting next to the two bus drivers who had been driving we came from northern Italy all the way down to Naples, and I was sitting next to them, and the waiters had brought up these beautiful caprese salads and put them in the middle of the table. And I just looked at it. It was like, you just look to enjoy the way it
Oh
looks
my
in
gosh.
all its glory, the proper mozzarella and the beautiful tomatoes and the olive oil and the basil. And I just looked at it and thought, oh, it's so nice to see it without balsamic. So I thought I'd tell these guys, the two bus drivers, I said, hey, I said, do you know what in America the big thing to do with caprese salads? And I wish I would have got it on film
Oh
because it was
God.
the funniest thing ever. And I said, because, I spoke to them in Italian and I said, they put balsamico. And both of them at the same time, they were sitting across from each other, threw their hands up above their
Oh
heads, and
my.
they went, oh.
I love it.
Now, these are bus drivers, mind
Right.
you.
Oh yeah,
They're
they
not
know.
they're not chefs. This is the difference that and I know about the Italian food culture is it crosses all boundaries.
Exactly, because it's part of a culinary identity, a cultural identity that it's just more food in Italy, and I'm sure you would agree, is more than just consuming something and now you're not hungry anymore. It is a representation of history, of tradition, of know-how, of terroir, of local identity, because Italy is a nation of many different identities, as you know, as well as I do. And I mean, they're if they're proud of something, they're proud of soccer and they're proud of food. And I can't think of anything else. The history, of course, but
Vino.
vino, of course, vino. But
Espresso.
it all goes to food. It all goes to food.
Exactly. It's
They
all
love
it's
that
all
is
in there.
something that they will fight you over. But I mean, I guess for good reason as well. So, um, authenticity and creativity. So, what? So, with your mission of saving authentic Italian dishes, where do you draw the line between preserving tradition and encouraging innovation in the kitchen? We kind of just talked about it, calling
Mhm.
things differently, correct?
Right. Um, Here's a good example. So, I'm the part of the Tiramisu Academy California, the chapter of the original tiramisu that was invented in Treviso. And every year they have the Tiramisu World Cup in Treviso. Now, the inventor, Roberto Linguanotto, was the creator. He made the original, right? He came up with the 6 ingredient tiramisu. But he was so open to anyone and everyone making their own version. That was the original, and he was very happy. I mean, now the tiramisu competition has the original competition. So there's a winner that makes the best original creation. And then there's the creative competition. And he was all for that. And actually I've been involved in the Golden Spurtle in Scotland, which is the oatmeal porridge competition. They do the exact same thing.
So cool.
You you have to make an original, which in Scotland is steel cut oats, water, and salt. That is all that's permitted. That's the original. That's how I like mine. I just I can't tell you how much joy I get out of eating a really good bowl of porridge made like that,
Hmm.
because it has so much flavor and it's so the texture and everything about it. And I like to pour a little half and half, cream, milk. It just is this glorious breakfast. And when people tell me they don't like it, I always would love to make it for them and let them try, because I've tasted porridge in places
Do you
and
think
it's vile. It
so?
is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if they're not making it the correct way, do you think they don't like it because sometimes the quote unquote original of whatever food it could be could sometimes seem to be a little bland? And our modern palates are so used to ultra processed sweet foods all the time. So when
Yes
something is
and
not
no.
okay, what do you think? What do you have to say?
So my biggest thing is I think that they don't put salt. And if they don't put salt, there's not enough salt. That's the key. I would not eat it if it didn't have salt in it. If you made me porridge and you made it the right way, you cooked it long enough, and you put it in front of me, I couldn't add salt to it, I would refuse to eat it. Here's an example that you will understand. How do you like pasta that's cooked with no salt?
No, I put the salt in the water when I cook it. Absolutely.
But if someone gave you pasta that was cooked without salt, you know what that tastes like, right? Whenever you forget to put salt in, have you ever done that and tasted it without salt?
I don't recall that I have. To be quite honest, I don't recall that I have. If it tastes saltless, I'll say, "Give me the Parmigiano," and I want to add some flavor to it. If it
So
tastes too
try
bland, I don't
this.
know. I'm sorry, I'm being
Try
difficult for you.
No, but here's the thing, because my mom lives here, we're in the kitchen cooking together. We're making pasta. Somebody puts the pot on the water on to boil. And, it's like, we don't want to oversalt it. So it's like, did you put the salt? Sometimes the pasta goes in. She thinks I put the salt in. The salt has, and you taste it again, vile. It's flavorless, horrible stuff. So salt is so important that I don't think a lot of people realize how very important salt is. And just for porridge, 3 ingredients: salt, water, and porridge. You take the salt out and it's terrible. Even if you eat it sweet, you still have to add the salt.
So it just goes to show you, I mean, such a simple, even if it's a little bit simple ingredient, plays a huge, huge role. I wanted to go back to a second to tiramisu because you said you're one of the judges. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, yes, I'm here in Los Angeles. We have the Tiramisu Academy, California, but also my friend Cynthia from What a Girl Eats. We both go to Treviso to be judges
And you were there not
um,
too long ago. I remember following your stories on Instagram, which
in October. Yep.
right, which made me want to book a flight and fly over and join you. Maybe next year, who knows? But that would be
Yes,
great.
yes. Oh,
But
you would love it.
I just wanted to ask you. So you judge the quote unquote original, authentic tiramisu, and then the creative versions of the tiramisu as well. What is the most creative version of tiramisu that you've encountered, or something you'd like to share?
Oh my goodness, there's so many. I mean, there's hundreds of competitors. Honestly, I there just so many of them are so.
Like, is it they use the original ingredients, but prepare it to make it look in a different way, or
Nope,
how?
they have to use their They have to use Savoiardi, they have to use coffee, and they have to use the egg mixture. I believe those are the three things, and then after that, they can add,
The
their own.
non-negotiables.
They can put. Somebody did. I think it was not last year because I was in Scotland last year. 2 years ago, the winner made a mint version for the creative, and I remember thinking, I don't know about that. And I tasted it and was like, wow, had no idea it was going to taste like that. It was really good. She ended up winning. So yeah,
I do
there's
like
just
that. I didn't know that. I always thought, since I've never attended, a tiramisu, the world competition before. I didn't know that there were multiple categories in terms of the original and the creative. So I like that. I'm glad that they do that, because Italians tend to have the people know Italians as being, very strict with
restrictive.
with their
Yeah.
cooking. And whenever I asked a question about how do you innovate while maintaining tradition, I think this is one of the perfect examples is tiramisu.
You keep the original and you put it on a pedestal and you say that is the epitome of this dessert. That is how it was created. But we don't have to make that all the time. We don't ever have to make it if we don't, as long as we know what it is. I think it's important to know. What if somebody says, we went, Cynthia and I went to dinner at an Italian restaurant here in LA and they had tiramisu on the menu. Of course, we have to try it. And we asked, what do you use? We asked the chef, what do you use to make your tiramisu? They had no idea we were judges. And he named off the 6 ingredients, and we were like, "Bravo, bravo, this is
Thank
the
God.
original," and it was fantastic.
Awesome, awesome. So little did they know they were being judged without even knowing. Love it. So I mean, I think we made it quite clear that food is part of one's identity. So how has embracing both your Scottish and Italian heritage helped shape your identity, and how do you express that through your personal cooking?
Well, I don't usually combine the 2. I do keep them separate. I'm not really
So nothing
into putting.
like how I'm Italian American, so we have Italian cuisine and Italian American cuisine, which are both separate. But the Italian American is more of a combination, historically speaking,
Right,
of
right.
Italian. For you do like to traditionally keep them separate.
I mean, I'll put whiskey and cioffe, chiacchiere, what I don't know
I
which name
I call them
you.
cioffe because my family's from
Oh, you
Molise.
do?
We call them cioffe. Wow, when you said cioffe, it just
I
registered in my brain. I'm like, did she just say cioffe?
but usually that's more of a lesser used name for them, isn't it?
Oh, we call them leche. It is. It is. Yes, I've heard mainly if you say chiacchiere anywhere in Italy, they'll know what you're talking about. But
Right.
there are regional,
Frappe,
yeah, and also
guandi.
crostoli, I believe,
Right,
cioffe by us, chiacchiere, like we
right.
just said. So there are many different ways to say that's such a fantastic dessert. So you mentioned whiskey and cioffe or chiacchiere.
Well, yeah, because the recipe that my nonna, my mother, she would put, maybe she would put rum or whatever, but I'm like, you could put any kind of, liqueur. So throw in some whiskey and
So that's your
that
Scottish
makes
side.
it's a little
That's fun.
Scottish and Italian. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's familiar. I say because every family, when it comes to these, I don't like to say cucina povera or poor cuisine, but I call it smart cooking. When it comes to these really familiar, hearty type of old-fashioned recipes, every family has their own
Right.
spin on things, and there's nothing
Mhm.
wrong with that because these are really old recipes, le cioffe, which, like we said, are shared all throughout many regions in Italy, and they're definitely not done all the same exact way.
No, no, but I think it's, if you think of the way Italy is, the regions of the different kinds of cuisine, a microcosm of that is in, smaller towns, villages, and then the families. Everybody does. It's the same thing, but there's like a little, oh, my nonna did it this way, my mom did it that way, Zia does it this way, you know? So there is always, I think, change, and I don't do things exactly the way my mother did, or I like it a different way. There's always change happening, but the basic, recipe or whatever is what is passed down.
The
And
basic skeleton, let's just say.
right. It's like language. I mean, you can't stop language from evolving. We're not going to say, I'm not using that new word.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know?
exactly. I'm going to speak like Shakespeare for English or
Yeah,
Dante like Italian, you know?
yeah, yeah.
So speaking of ingredients, so let's talk about authentic Italian ingredients, sourcing authentic ingredients. So in an era, of course, of convenience, of processed foods, of ultra processed foods, which here in the United States we can't escape, unfortunately. What advice would you give to listeners about sourcing quality, authentic ingredients for their own kitchen?
Definitely depends on where you live if you want to, get in your car and go drive and buy it.
That's
I
so
think
so true.
where I am, it's a lot easier for us. For you especially, I would say
In New
the East
Jersey,
Coast,
right?
well, even just the East Coast in general, you just have so much more availability. I think
Right,
logistically, you're so much closer. And there are more Italians there than there. Los Angeles is so huge.
right.
We don't even really have a little Italy or a region, except maybe San Pedro, that, there's more Italians there.
Just out of curiosity,
Um,
do you have an Italy in Los Angeles?
We do. It's rather small. I mean, I've been to a lot of them. It's definitely not my favorite Italy because it is smaller. But yes, we do have one,
Okay,
and I
no,
do.
because that's
That
just
is one of
one of the places I think of when people don't know where to go to buy something authentically Italian. Granted, at Italy you pay an arm and a leg, of course, but at
well,
least that's
that's what I was just going to say. Yeah,
that's
it's
more of
very
a good Italian quote unquote experience for people who can't book a trip and go to Italy right away. You know,
exactly. And if you really are, there's a certain thing that you really really want. The way I look at it, and I mean, they always say, the Scots are so cheap and, they're frugal and all that kind of. I mean, I grew up poor. My parents grew up poor. We had to make do with what we had. My priority, and this is, I grew up with my parents doing this too, is food. This is something you're putting in your body.
agreed.
Why are we cheaping out on food? I've had people write to me and say, I'm not going to pay, because I'll say these are the kinds of the brands of pasta that I approve. Christina's Cucina approved. These are the ones that, and it's like, well, this was years ago. I can get pasta for, 99 cents a pound. Why am I going to pay $3 a pound? Okay, let's step back and we can look at this a few different ways. These are the same people that are going to Starbucks every day. Okay? Let's not get started on don't get me started on Starbucks, but we'll just put that aside. And I will also say, if you go to, and I'm pro going to restaurants. I love going to restaurants. But if you go to a really good Italian restaurant, okay, and you order a plate of pasta, how many ounces of pasta is that, and how much did you pay for it?
Right,
Let's just say there's no truffle on it, okay? Do you know how much that is a pound that you're paying for that pasta? Yes, it's
way
been
more than
prepared.
$3 a pound.
That's my point. So three. I mean, how many people does that serve a pound of pasta? Let's look at things differently.
I, I couldn't agree anymore. You hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. It's the way we view food. And
Correct.
unfortunately, in North America, in these countries where we're very much a task oriented type of country, we're quick, we want convenience, we don't view food as, or most people, I should say, don't view food as nutrition. They view food as, okay, I'm hungry, I want
Health.
to. Exactly,
It's
health.
health.
It is
The
health,
bottom line
absolutely.
is health.
It's health, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, you're perfectly correct with a better quality pasta. Even if you were to pay, let's just exaggerate, $6 a pound, you could still feed a family of five. Get fresh tomatoes and a good quality olive oil, a little drizzle, and maybe a shaven up Parmigiano Reggiano, and you have dinner right there, which trumps any fast food restaurant you'll ever go to in terms of nutrition, in terms of health, in terms of well-being as well, because you cook that, you feel better about yourself.
And it's cheaper. than the fast food. Guaranteed, even if you're paying more than, say, you don't know, well, is this, a good price for this because I'm not used to buying it. I see these jars of tomato sauce in the stores and I am blown away because I don't normally go to, I don't know what you have on the East Coast there, like Giant. Yeah,
Yeah,
Giant
we have
is near my
typically in
son.
my area. Yeah, haven't seen a Giant in a while. I have heard of Giant. We have ShopRite. We have Whole Foods. We have what else? I can't even think off the top. I
But
like to
I'm
go
talking like
specialty.
regular, yeah, a regular American grocery store. Those to me are horrifying. They are horrifying. I literally walk in there and I'm just stunned at what is on the shelves. Even though I've grown up here, it's so bad now, and I'm so used to shopping at like Trader Joe's, which there's still things now in Trader Joe's since it got sold that you have to read the labels, you have to read the ingredients. There's stuff in there that never used to be that way, but like a Ralph's or Kroger, and you walk in the center aisles because the dairy and the thing, even in those sections, there's stuff, horrifying foods. Those things, it's poison. Those aisles are lined with poison. Now, as a children's social worker, I will say this point blank because I don't mince words, and people say, they use opinionated about me to describe me. I say it myself. I'm opinionated. I will tell you my opinion. You don't have to like, gee, I wonder what she's saying here. That the food that is packaged, processed is poison for your children. It is poisoning your children. This is why all the health problems that we have, the obesity, the diabetes, the all of it. Read what the labels are telling you. They're telling you if it's 20 ingredients in something, if the first ingredient is high fructose corn syrup, put it back on the shelf. Do not feed it to your children. I don't care if the kid's having a temper tantrum saying, I want that, frosted flakes, mommy, mommy, mommy. We buy it all the time and you're not going to buy it anymore. There's ways to deal with it.
You're 100% correct, and people often say like, "Oh, my kids don't like vegetables. They don't like this. They don't like that." Vegetables are delicious. First of all, second of all, you can make them taste so good. And I was just thinking of an example today. I'm also a teacher, so sometimes I see what the students eat at lunch, and I noticed today one student didn't finish his, what did he have? String beans. He's like, "I don't like string beans," and I thought to myself, vegetable, like what I specifically do, if I don't have kids, but if I did have kids, you make the vegetables, you could blend them up with a hand blender, add a little Parmigiano Reggiano, add some good extra virgin olive oil,
There's
put it
so
over
many things you
pasta, and it literally becomes such a delicious meal that people in restaurants would pay $25, $30 for a dish of pasta like that.
But the mentality is, I think now, from what I'm seeing, is the children are the ones that make the decisions. Little Johnny wants this. What do you want, Johnny? Johnny doesn't like this. And I used to do this when I was, because I taught parenting skills. And I would say to the parents, when you are speaking on the phone or you're speaking to another adult about your child, that is like super ultra programming that child. What you say, what they overhear you say about them, you are programming them. So I used to hear them all the time say, oh, Johnny doesn't like carrots, he doesn't like cooked carrots, whatever. And I'm like, oh my god, oh my god. So they've just programmed their kid to not like carrots. So I would say, instead of saying that, when they're in the other room and they're in earshot, have them hear you say to your friend or whoever you're talking to, you know what? He's really an adventurous eater. Even if he's not, he's an adventurous eater. He likes to try new things, and I'm so proud of it. Put that mindset into the child to have them go, oh, I didn't know I was like that. Oh, I must be like that.
You're programming the child, absolutely, absolutely.
And
This is how
and put the food on the plate. They don't have to eat it. There was a doctor that basically discovered that once you take the power struggle out of having children, you have to eat this, you have to eat that, the way, my parents would say, you're going to eat that, you get nothing else before you go to bed. You're going to, and then the thing is, a lot of kids, their taste buds are different than ours. And yes, there's things they're not going to like, but you can't force them. But if you put things on their plate and it just has to sit there, they don't have to eat it, but it has to sit there. They can't scrape it off, they can't give it to you, whatever. They said that basically by the second or third time that they've had, say, peas on their plate, they get curious and they try it on their own.
Oh, wow.
And because the pressure's off and there's no power struggle, they're eating it of their own accord. And they're like, I like these or I don't like them. And
That's
it's
that's very powerful for any parents who are listening to today's episode. That's good information to take away. Put it on their dish, and eventually, statistics say that they'll eventually get curious and try and eat it.
absolutely, instead of forcing them, and because especially when you've got like a terrible twos or whatever, the kids that just they're trying to be autonomous and they want to make their own decisions, and you're telling them no, which most parents I think are not forcing kids to eat things. So the pendulum has swung the other way. And I know so many families that the children only eat snacks and they sit down to eat dinner, and they're snacks is there what they live on.
That's a
It
shame.
it is.
I
It's
mean, we
not
could
nutritious.
not at all. I mean, it's not food. Call it whatever you want. It's not food. And another thing that we have an issue with, in at least in the United States, are the food deserts. People just simply don't have access to food, legit food. They have corner stores. They have these convenience stores where they can buy prepared things, ultra processed products, and that's all they have. And it's not of their own fault. So that's another thing that we hopefully are able to change. It's going to take, in my opinion, a cultural revolution, but I guess
The
anything is possible.
little
The little steps.
Little by little, there are places online, just two come to mind: Supermarket Italy and Yummy Bazaar, where they offer free shipping for it. It's not like, I think Italy is 100 and some, but these two places are maybe $79 free shipping, which is not a huge amount. You can buy really good olive oil, really good tomatoes, really good Italian products. There, they have specials, they have discounts. It's shipped to your home. So if you are somewhere where you don't have access, like you and I do, to Italian stores and maybe international shops that do sell these things, you have options. I mean, you can Google a certain product. I list products on my site, and I'll say, these are the places. Or you could go onto my Amazon shop and see how much is it on Amazon. Oh, okay, it's this much on Amazon. Come over here, it's half the price at this place. Order it there. I put it on Amazon so people can see the product. It's not necessarily you have to shop and order it through my link. Absolutely not. This is where you can see what the product looks like so that you're not going to be duped, which is what you're telling people.
Exactly. The core of my work. And you mentioned your website as well, and you have plenty of recipes on your website and a lot of great content. I just wanted to ask you, what's one lesser known dish, in your opinion, from Italian cuisine that you believe deserves more recognition, and why?
Well, it was something that you were similar to what you were eating the other day. You put it on your Instagram and it made, like my mouth water when I saw it. Yeah. We call it minestra. I got into an argument with a reader about minestra because, you know, it's like this whole thing, minestra soup. My family, what we call this dish, it's greens and beans. You can make it soupy, but it's not soup. That's just what we called it in southern Italy, in this little tiny village. My nonna taught us this is minestra. So if I say to my cousin, I had minestra yesterday, she knows exactly what I ate. We use like cabbage, chard, dandelion. You can really put any kind of greens in there,
Leafy greens.
leafy greens that are so good for you. I mean, this is what we're not eating enough of. How many Americans are eating dandelion? It's going to be a very small percentage. How many can buy it at their grocery store?
A smaller
That's another
percentage.
thing. Right. I can get it here in most stores have dandelion, chicoria, that that you can actually get it fresh and you can make this minestra. Olive oil, really good olive oil, garlic. We use our homemade cotechino
Oh,
that we make that is different than the big one that is from the north, but it's using like snout to tail.
wow.
I
Yeah,
mean,
using not wasted, zero waste, zero waste.
we put ear in there and snout and cheek and skin, and it is one of my favorite things in the world. But
I
I
love
grew
these
up with
dishes.
it.
Right.
I grew up with it. I understand Americans that would go, "Ooh, ooh, I don't want to eat a pig's ear." However, what I always say is if you're vegetarian or vegan, fine. You absolutely have the right to say you don't, because that you're putting your money where your mouth is, basically. But if you eat meat, if you eat a pork chop and you eat a hamburger, it's really sad that that cow or pig died and you're throwing parts of it away
Right. Right. Yeah,
because you
exactly. If you're
don't
looking at it at that
like
point.
it.
Exactly. At that point, yeah. You're right about that.
So in Whole Foods, I was looking for pancetta. I wanted to make pancetta, so I was looking for the pork belly, but I want it with the skin on. And I said, "Can I asked the butcher, can you get the pork belly with the skin on?" He goes, "We used to, but we had to stop." Guess why? Guess what the reason was?
Why?
Because people complained they didn't want to see the pork skin.
Because it looked too much like the animal.
So, yeah, my hands just went up to my face here.
Yes, I
Here's where
know.
I just it's mind-boggling to me that the mentality is so distorted. It's a distorted view. If the animal dies, we should use every single part that we can.
I agree. Zero waste.
And and
I'm total
and it's
supporter.
delicious. It's
Yeah.
absolutely delicious. It's not like it's like this hard sausage that's got these crunchy bits in it, the flavor is insane. It's got fennel seeds and a little hot pepper.
So good.
It's amazing, and it lends this flavor to the minestra. And then you put the beans in there, and then you dish it out, and you've got a little, kind of soupiness going on. You've got the greens, you've got the beans, the protein, the sausage, and then you eat it with fresh, crusty bread and a sweet onion. That's how Nonno would. He loved his, sweet onion. So you take a bite of the onion, a bite of that, the bread, and then you soak up the.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
I'm
right
salivating.
now I'm starving right now. We're talking about I have to stop recording these episodes when I'm hungry. I have to do it when I have a full
Yeah,
stomach. So you mentioned this recipe minestra you call it, which
and you
is
can
something.
absolutely make it without yeah, yeah, because that would be very difficult to source.
Right, right. So you mentioned this is something you grew up with, and let's just say family was a big role in your life when you grew up. So we talk about cooking um, for connection with other people because conviviality is a huge part of Italian cuisine, but not just Italian cuisine, many cuisines around the world. So what role does food play in fostering relationships and building community? And how could listeners use cooking to bring people together, in your opinion?
I think one of the most fun things that people could do, like with a website like mine, and I'm not saying just mine, but any um, website or a place where you could get recipes from a certain cuisine. So whether it's Japanese or Mexican or Italian or British, have a get together instead of just getting together and throwing hamburgers and hot dogs on the grill and doing, the typical American thing, which that's the culture here. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm saying instead of doing that every single time, why not travel the world through cuisine and say, okay, we're going to have, we're going to travel to Italy this time. You bring this antipasto, or one person brings an antipasto, another person brings another antipasto. Somebody, the person that's house you meet at, makes the main course. Somebody makes an Italian dessert, and then they can bring it all together. And that person that brings, say, the caprese, would bring a caprese, and if they got the recipe from my site, they'd say, "Hey, you want to know something? I never knew there's no balsamic on caprese."
And then recount
On
the
the
story
original, they would say how it's from Capri. I bet most people don't know caprese means from Capri.
of Capri. Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Capri.
yeah.
Now, most people don't know
So
that. It's just a word to them,
they
right?
they don't. And so, this is not something that you're going to make in January because you need really good fresh tomatoes. So this is a seasonal, as with Italian food, a lot is all seasonal cooking. And the mozzarella, you source a good mozzarella, taste it, try, different ones, see which one tastes better to you, because you don't have to be Italian to know which one's got more flavor and is more. I mean, we have some places here where they're bringing the dry milk over from Italy and making it here in LA. So we've got choices here, but they also ship. So put a little money aside. Instead of, go a week without your Starbucks, you'll be surprised how much money you have, and splurge. Order some, Italian product that you maybe have never tasted. And if you do go to Italy, if you've been to Italy, you can appreciate these things more and say, "Oh my goodness, that reminds me of when we were sitting, on that deck on the, overlooking the sea and having that pizza." Make pizza together. I don't know if you know Vito Jacopelli. He's amazing. He's a maestro. Like, his pizzas are incredible. He wants to teach everyone. He's infectious. He's so,
Wow.
you know,
Is passionate
like,
about what he does, and that
so
rubs off onto
incredible.
everybody.
Yes, yes, and gives you. He doesn't you stop anybody like, "Oh, I'm not giving the secret." He's not gatekeeping anything. He's giving every single secret. How Neapolitan pizza makers, the ingredients you need to use, the how you make the biga, and let it sit in the fridge. It's not difficult. It really is. It's not, how can I say it? It's not easy. It's not the typical, like, a buy your dough at the grocery store and shape it at home.
Hmm.
But the few steps that you do to get to that point where you have the dough that you got, like, from the grocery store, is infinitely so much better.
Right.
And like you said, you have that sense of accomplishment.
And that's very
People,
important. That's very
I put
important.
it is. People have put reviews on my site because I've shared his recipe to say, go follow him. Go see what he's telling you. If you want to know how to defrost it, go to his YouTube and watch it. So I'm just spreading the word, but I've I've put the recipe down, and people have, you know, come on there and said, "Oh my God, I had no idea. This tastes just like the pizza that we had in Naples. I've never had one like that, and I made it."
So then food becomes an experience. It becomes an experience
It's
through
so
taste,
good. Yeah,
but also through the human to human aspect, and sharing those moments, those special moments with other people as well. And one could say, hey, I live alone, I cook by myself, but guess what? We have phones, we have video chats. We could do this over, you know, if we had to,
absolutely.
over video chat.
Yeah.
So the point I'm trying to make are these experiences that we are experiencing, for lack of a better term, that make the food much more palatable, if you will. And nothing's worse than, in my opinion, we talk about fake Italian food, or developing a palate for fake Italian dishes or Italian sounding foods, then traveling to Italy and saying, oh, I didn't know that mozzarella really looks like this. I thought it was this dry stuff that came in a bag. And now all of a sudden they're attacking the real thing, because to them, mozzarella comes in a bag and it's all dried up and shredded. So I guess that leads me to my. Did you want to say something?
No, it's just that's a whole nother thing where they're catering to tourists in Italy now. So you can actually get bad food in certain places in Italy
In some places,
because, yes, because I mean, we had in Rome, I ate at a place that my friend and I we were so disappointed
that's a shame.
because they're like, well, they don't appreciate the real stuff, so let's just give them this
They
that's
probably
cheaper.
say 99% of our clients are non-Italian. They're not going to know, like you just said. So we're going to give them the type of stuff, not the
Yes,
not the great things. And that's where our work comes into play. And we have to educate people on where to go to find the real deal, because nothing. I guess I found something worse than eating fake Italian food in the United States would be fake Italian food in Italy. So
right.
so
Because it's
that's something.
disappointing. It's so much more disappointing there.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Unfortunately, I mean,
disappointing.
I guess in order to sell things, but I just want to speak a minute about lessons from our travels. So I know you've traveled many, many times to Italy. I've also traveled many times to Italy. So what are the most impactful lessons, if you will, about food and culture that you've learned through your travels throughout Italy, and how could listeners incorporate those into their everyday lives?
I think having an open mind and realizing, because I get attacked a lot online if I make a comment or something and say, for example, if somebody says, make this authentic caprese, and they've poured the balsamic glaze over it, and I'll just say, authentic Italian caprese never has balsamic glaze. And then people attack me. Who are you to say that? Da, 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 da. I always want people to realize that there is a reason that these rules and quotes exist. Balsamic is from the north.
Right,
Okay. And I'm not saying that Southern Italy, now that we're in 2024, that they're not using it. But the history of the dish, it was made that way for a reason. It got passed down that way for a reason. A lot of times it's simply because it tastes good. That is the bottom line. Here's the thing that most people don't realize, and I understand why they put balsamic on caprese here, because the tomatoes don't taste like they're tomatoes. The mozzarella doesn't taste like. So you got to give it something a
doctor it up
little,
a little bit. Right.
you got to doctor it up. And that's what people say all the time. Like, I had a comment one time, somebody said, you don't know how to cook. You don't even use spices.
So
So this is the mentality that I do use spices. I just don't use Italian seasoning, which
right,
is not
I knew exactly what you meant
Italiano.
with that comment. That's why I laughed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh my god, I know.
So
I fight a lot of battles online too, as you would imagine. But sometimes you could lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it.
right, right. And when I was in Venice, I don't know if I think I might have tagged you because they have these spice packets. They look really pretty, and they look nice. They're colorful. They got the thing. Sometimes they tie a little wooden spoon to them. And it'll say on the pack in English, mind
Of
you.
course, never
This
Italian,
is
because Italians don't buy that.
correct, but it'll say the aglio e olio was actually written in Italian, but I thought, oh my god, that is literally garlic and oil, but they have this packet that weighs like 8 ounces of
Oh my,
all these different spices.
jeez.
And this is what they're selling to people, and people are going to go home and they're going to use it and say, "Oh, I bought this in Italy." It's not made, probably isn't even made in Italy.
Right,
It's probably getting shipped in.
but even if it
Yeah,
is made in Italy, they're still going to
it's
make the argument. Look, I
or
bought it in Italy, so it's product of Italy,
correct.
so therefore it's real. And it's like, now you're making my job even more difficult. Yes, the contents within that package may be Italian, but that does not mean that it will yield an Italian dish.
But also there's chefs and celebrity chefs and Italian that are born in Italy, Italians who, again, I'm going to be opinionated. I'm going to say it. I won't name names, but they
Say
are
whatever you want.
sellouts.
Yeah,
They are sellouts.
money
So
talks.
they are making our job again much more difficult because Americans may be somebody that's never been to Italy and they don't know. They hear this chef who's from Italy that is, whatever they're on Food Network or, here, there, whatever, the big name that everybody knows them, and they're selling their product, and it's one of these fake Italian things. You can't blame these people for saying, but she was born in Italy. He
Right.
was born in Italy. There's somebody in LA that's got a sandwich shop that's making these huge 20 ingredient panini and saying, he speaks with like an Italian accent. The people believe that that is Italian. And so when I say with my American accent, that's not really Italian, who has more credence?
Well, the person with the accent, because an accent is soft power. I've gotten comments like that as well. Of course, with my Northeast American accent, they're like, "Who are you to tell us what to buy, what to do, what to think?" I mean, you weren't even born in Italy. I mean, that's true. I wasn't born in Italy, but I mean, I believe also to be prepared in certain cases when it comes to Italian food, as you do as well. But yeah, money. Going back to your original topic, money talks. Some people believe in compromising their personal values for money, and I guess if the
Yes.
dollar value gets so large, most people probably fall into that trap.
Yeah, yeah, it's sad because
It is.
then again, you and I have to fight that much harder to try to get people to realize this is not. I mean, again, I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to say where, but there was an Italian
Hmm.
that was promoting Parmesan cheese, fake Parmigiano, and a reader, because I can't say anything, a reader wrote and said, you really shouldn't be promoting this because you're teaching people to buy a product that is fake,
Right.
but they're paid to promote that, and they're born in Italy, so people are going to go there. That's the marketing companies like, woohoo,
Right.
we got somebody
Exactly.
that's born in Italy. It's so
Totally agree,
frustrating.
and that's a battle I fight on a daily basis. I am a strong supporter of Parmigiano Reggiano, and compared to the fake Italian sounding Parmesan in the United States. So that's I just say flat out, go Team Parmigiano Reggiano all the way. And I mean,
I mean,
and here's the thing:
yeah,
like people say, well, if we want to talk about Parmigiano Reggiano for a second, they say, well, Parmesan is just the English way of saying Parmigiano. So yes and no. In North America, Parmesan is the fake version of Parmigiano. So you don't have to go around and say Parmigiano Reggiano with the Italian accent. That's not what I'm trying to say. Parmigiano Reggiano is fine. Parmigiano, say Parmesan with an O at the end. Parmigiano, you're done. That's all. I mean, I know it sounds simple, but if you could say other Italian words when it comes to, you know, cuisine, pizza or bruschetta, they say bruschetta, but that's, I think we're winning
yeah,
that fight.
yeah.
Cappuccino. You could say other words. You could say Parmigiano as well. So it's something that I've spent years on my platform trying to educate people on, and a lot of them will they'll say like you're pretentious, you're gatekeeping,
Right,
you're so many
right.
different things, and that's not the case. Fun fact about Parmigiano Reggiano: in Europe, they do own the rights to the word Parmesan. So within the European Union, Parmesan does belong to the consortium of Parmigiano Reggiano. However, in North America, Parmesan and Parmigiano Reggiano are two separate things. So that's also where the confusion could arise from, if you will.
But I think the education is key
It is.
because a lot of people don't know, and they
They
don't
don't.
know, and they see the price, and it's like, oh, I could get 10 times the amount of Parmesan that I could get for the DOP, the real stuff. So I can't afford the other one. Well, what I would say is skip it altogether, buy the little bit of Parmigiano for a special occasion, or like
if that's your
it's
if that's your
not
worry,
worth.
right?
Yes, it's not worth, like, for me, if I can't buy something that is the right thing, I will just avoid. I'll
I
eat something
agree.
else.
I agree 100% of any culture, not just Italian culture. Like why?
Correct,
Like if we talk
absolutely.
about like cheddar cheese, it's not Italian, but I'm not going to buy the. Personally speaking, I would prefer to buy the real cheddar than the fake one.
Right.
but that's just the way my mentality is, you know, and that's with everything. And I think a lot of this could resonate with younger generations. So we talk about millennials, we talk about Gen Zs, for example, where a lot of people are starting to put value in authenticity, being original, and not being duped with things. Nobody wants to buy things that are fake. So
That's
they
that's the
put
bottom line.
that.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe that's because we're a very niche market now, and niche, you know, very categorize different things. Like, I mean, even when it comes to not just food, but anything. And that leads me to believe that people are putting value in the specificity of things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And food is
But
one of them.
I think what you do is so important because if I see, if first of all, nobody wants to be duped. Nobody wants to be
Nobody.
taken to the cleaners.
Right.
Nobody. You can't tell me that there's one person that goes, "Yes, please sell me something that, is not what you tell me that it is." So, whenever I see the opportunity to help someone, to say, "Hey, even if I'm in the store and I see people discussing, I was in Costco last week and people were looking at the different, it's like it's coming out of me, like I have to, like,
You're
okay, make it, don't be inappropriate,
I know you
like,
have to
don't.
figure out how to approach these people without seeming like you're overstepping boundaries.
Correct, because you don't want to say, "Hey, don't buy that, buy
Right.
this." But
Right.
I do end up saying, "Do you guys like to cook?" Open with that. Do you guys like to cook? They're looking at tomatoes. Oh, do you mind if I give you some advice? Because I say my mother was born in Italy. I
Right.
think that leaves
That's
a
a
little
good
bit of.
right. People will then find you more quote unquote credible by saying
Right,
something like that. Right.
right. Instead of me, it's my mother was born in Italy, so here's, some information I can give you, and then I can say whatever. And then they take that information, they want to tell me where to go. That's fine. They want to take it. Most people are very gracious. Oh, I didn't know. Thank you so much. But the price of a can of good Italian tomatoes versus this pre-made whatever, those jars of the brand name that, oh, it's so good, it's so good. And one is, I think, one is getting sued or something now for saying that they didn't have seed oils in it. Instead of using olive oil, they have, I think, canola or sunflower or something, which no Italian would ever use.
We need to go back to the basics. We need to go back to the basics, and we have an entire country to educate, and that
We're
means that
doing it one drop at a time.
one drop at a time, one post at a time, one podcast episode at a time, and it's good that there are like-minded people out there that are trying to fight this battle, and you're one of them. And that's so glad. That's why I'm so happy that you were here today with me to to share your insights, because we have a lot of work to do, as we just discussed in this past hour. A ton of work to do, but I mean, it starts small, and then it starts to pick up, and like we just mentioned a few minutes ago, people don't like to be duped.
Right, right. And that's the thing where I tell people, I was in Trader Joe's today and I told someone to follow you
Oh, well, thank
because
you.
it's all the time. It's all the time because there's so many products. Like you said, they just slap an Italian flag on
They
there
do.
and put an O or an A at the end of the
it's
name,
it's
and it
amazing.
sells.
It is, and
It sells.
it does. It's incredible. I mean, you tell this to any Italian who owns a small business in Italy, that the Italian flag sells in the United States. You put it on anything, starting with food, but going anywhere. You could triple or quadruple the price, and you'll be able to sell it. It's amazing the how Americans view quality of Italian products, and it's because they are of quality, especially when it comes to food. But
But
not
it's
only,
getting
of
watered
course,
down here.
it is getting watered
That
down. Of course,
The Italian flag is getting watered down in America.
it
That's
does.
simply what they're doing.
It
It's
is.
sad.
It is. It is sad. And here's one thing that everybody could take away. The more exaggerated Italianness you see on a packaging, you should think twice about it and read the fine print. Because if you go to Italy and you go to a supermarket and you're buying things, I don't know anything that has an Italian flag on it. I can't recall really anything. They're
No,
just
I can't
regular
think of
products with
anything.
regular packaging,
Right.
and you buy. So the more Italianness, the more Italian flags you see, read twice, 3 times, 4 times,
Yeah.
look for the fine
Yeah.
print. I mean, it's so
Read
funny.
those labels.
We
Read the labels.
exactly. We know because we've been to Italy. We speak Italian. We're familiar with the Italian culture, but seeing things like, Italian sounding gorgonzola with the rolling hills of Tuscany in the background. I mean, gorgonzola doesn't come from Tuscany, so. But how would you know that? You wouldn't know if you've
Right.
never been to Italy, if you've never studied Italy or Italian. So that's why they're so duped. But anyway, this was a fantastic conversation, and I'm so glad that we were able to speak about something that we're so clearly passionate about. I know I had originally said a half an hour, but I knew it was going to go longer because when we talk about things that we like, I mean, we're over an
It's
hour
hard.
right now.
It's difficult.
It's hard to
Yeah.
stop. You know what? This conversation would be better with a glass of wine and in person and discussing real Italian products as we're consuming them as well. So I hope we're able to do
We
that
could
one
rate.
day.
We could rate them. We could do that.
Absolutely, that would be fun. I have
Actually,
nothing.
I've got a tiramisu panettone in the kitchen that I
Oh
need
wow!
to cut into. And
Send me a picture. I want to see. Real quick before I let you go, where could people find your work?
if you Google Christina's Cucina, it's christinascucina.com, Christina. It's not spelled the proper Italian way because my dad, when he went to register my birth in Scotland, he didn't realize that it was supposed to be CRIS. So
It's okay. It still says Christina. It's fine.
it sounds the same,
It
so
does.
it's
It does.
okay. But yeah, my mom wasn't very happy when she realized that the birth certificate had the name spelled wrong. But
Chris-
christinascucina.com. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, X or Twitter. I don't know what people are calling it now. I still call it Twitter.
I know we're so used to it. Awesome.
Yeah, but
And I'll include your contact information in the show notes as well for the podcast.
thank you so much for having me, Robert.
Absolutely. This was a fantastic conversation. Again, thank you so much for your time. For those of you who are listening, make sure you check out our website, christinascucina.com, and all of her social media to find great content. So, Christina, grazie mille. Thank you very much.
Grazie a lei.
Grazie. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the stories of authentic Italian cuisine. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more insights and interviews. Also, feel free to reach out with your thoughts or questions on our social media channels at Stop Italian Sounding or on our website, stopitasounding.com. Grazie a tutti e alla prossima.
Sentire Media.
Hey, podcast producers and show hosts. Do you want to join a podcast network that celebrates all things Italian? At Sentire Media, we understand the allure of Italy and its unique culture. Our devoted team of hosts and producers are all driven by their shared passion for Italy. And we work tirelessly to create the best lifestyle podcasts and content that will whisk you away to the very heart of Italy. With us, you can savor the mouth-watering flavors, get lost in the stories from the past, break down the cultural barriers, and truly immerse yourself in the vibrant traditions of this intoxicating country. If you have a great podcast idea or are already in production and would like to join Sentire Media, head over to sentiremedia.com, that's SENTIRE media.com, and find out how to submit your show.